So last weekend I went to PA Grand Canyon. Beautiful, beautiful, and the scenery, the creek that we were kayaking down, the mountains around it, the mist at the top of the mountains, or not the mist, the fog at the top of the mountains. Just the beauty that we were surrounded by. It was awe-inspiring. Niagara Falls. Beautiful. Beautiful. I've been there and I want to go back. Awe-inspiring. Words cannot describe the feeling that you have when you're surrounded by that much beauty, and it's just hard to take it all in. You could stare at it and stare at it and stare at it. It never gets old. The amount of water falling off of that ledge that's really high all the time. It's incredible. Watching my children be born and holding them for the first time. Awesome. That's the word I have. It's the only words. But another word that came to mind each time was perfect. You know, another sight that it's pretty common around here. Just a few months ago, really, it's when we get enough snow to cover the fields and the cut-off corn is covered up and you don't see it anymore, and it's just pure white, a pure blanket of white across the fields. That does something right here. Something about looking at purity. It just ministers to the heart. And so this morning, we're just going to focus a little bit on that word pure. The Greek word that's used in Scripture is hagnos, and it originally meant what awakens all. And it makes sense when I think about some of these things, some of these experiences I just shared with you. But, you know, seeing my children be born and holding them for the first time, that awakened all in me. Another meaning for pure: free from every fault or defilement, clean and clear of carnality. So Philippians 4:8, that's where I'm going. And most of us are probably really familiar with this scripture, but if not, I'm just going to read it real quick. And it says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So Philippians 4:8 says we need to set our minds on things that are pure. Now there's a lot of other words that are describing the thoughts that we should have, but I want to focus on pure for just a minute here. I'll be the first one to admit that a lot of the thoughts that come out of this head that are allowed to dwell in this head, oftentimes not pure. But this scripture isn't pointing us toward an impossible goal. Instead, it's pointing us in a direction that will cultivate a thriving spiritual mind instead of just surviving life's storms. Now, probably over the past year or so, a lot of us have probably felt like, and from time to time I have too, like we were just surviving life's storms. But there's a lot more to living a spiritual life than surviving. There is a thriving in the midst of the storm. Well, and let's just be honest, oftentimes the difference between suffering and contentment is in the mind. I'm not saying all the time, but a lot of times, difference between suffering and contentment is in the mind, and this particular scripture speaks directly to the mind and what's allowed to dwell there. years ago, I was working on this maple tree, taking it down. And over the course of the day, as we're, piecing this thing down a little bit at a time, I realized that there is this old copper pipe sticking out the side of it, about 10 or 15 feet high. Yeah, maybe a little bit shorter. Doesn't matter. This small piece of copper pipe was actually a tap, and it was to be used to allow sap to drain out and for the homeowner at the time to make maple syrup out of. It was a sugar maple, and typically that's the type of maple used to make maple syrup. And you've got to let that tap in there quite a while, and you've got to get a lot of gallons of sap to be able to process into like just a little quart of syrup. It takes a lot of sap to make a little bit of syrup, and it takes a long time. But the reason I mention this is that if we allow the wrong things to dwell here for a period of time, or a lengthy period of time, it's like a tap being left in the side of our spiritual mind, just draining the spiritual life right out of us, just draining the good stuff right out. And it takes a while, yeah, but how often do we just allow negative thoughts about other people to just dwell there, and we think it over and over again. Maybe we say it out loud to other people that feel the same way. Well, what good is it really doing? The only person that it's really causing the most destruction is ourselves, when we're constantly thinking negatively about someone else, because really it is like a tap. It really is. And it just drains the spiritual life right out of us. What's being described in Philippians 4:8 is a higher plane of thinking. And it's a much higher plane of thinking than what comes naturally for us. So some of these words that are used to describe the type of thoughts we can dwell on. One word is truth. True. Whatever is true. That's quite a relevant word in today's world, because there's been so many arguments over the past year on what's true and what's not. Not going to get into detail there, but it's just become downright annoying. I think we can all agree on that. Easiest way to put this is, if you don't know if something's true, don't dwell on it. If you're going to allow your mind to dwell on something, make sure that it's 100% truth. I would encourage you, fill your head with scripture. Allow words from the Bible to sink deep in here. 100% truth. Whatever is noble, whatever is right, upright, just, right is approved by God. Now, if we run our thoughts through that filter, approved by God, then we're going to be thinking a little bit differently. If we begin to run our thoughts through the filter of, okay, is this type of thinking approved by God? We're not going to be able to just think the same way, myself included. We're going to have to adjust a little, because when something's approved by God, that's a whole different standard. It's a whole different way of thinking. Whatever is pure, we've been talking about that. Whatever is lovely. Lovely means pleasing or agreeable. Whatever is admirable, of the highest standard. And that brings a little side note here. Maybe, or actually this is the challenge for this morning. Maybe we should raise the standards of the thoughts we allow to dwell in our mind. maybe we should, maybe I should, raise the standards of the thoughts I allow to dwell in my mind. Make sure first that it's approved by God. That's a really easy filter right there. And if it's not approved by God, then it doesn't have any business living in my mind. If anything is, all right, so that phrase being used here in the scripture, if anything is, this phrase urges us as believers to use our own discernment, to use our own judgment, and choose more excellent thoughts to occupy our minds. So there's just a special purity in a child. And I'll share this story with you real quick here. My oldest, Sadie, she was in, I think, kindergarten. And she had this friend that she got really close to. And she was describing him to me one day, because I had not met him yet. She sat with him every day at school. And she had told me so many times how much she enjoyed being with him. She'd be sad if he wasn't at school one day, and how much fun she would have with him on field trips, and just how she just enjoyed talking with him. One time they even missed the bus together. Both of them, missed different buses at the same time because they were just too busy talking to each other. And so she's trying to describe him to me one day. I said, well, what does he look like? And she had a hard time explaining to me, basically that his skin is a different color than hers. She was saying, his skin, it's darker. And I just was smiling the whole time she's trying to explain this to me, because here, the purity of a child, there's no racism. There's no judgment. There's no putting someone else down because of their color. There's no other thoughts accompanying that. No, it's just, this is what my friend looks like. That was it. And she even had never really thought about it until I asked her to describe it to me. So there is in Scripture an urgency to become like a child in our faith. And, that purity that I saw in my little girl, that was something else. And the challenge this morning is to allow God, to allow Him to bring our minds back to that of like a child, where we see things in a purest form, in a pure way, and we cease from allowing ourselves to look at things in such a negative perspective. Because let's face it, over time, life throws us some curveballs, and a lot of times we hold on to some things, and that causes us to just look at things with this negative aspect. But I'll read the scripture one more time to you. If anything, or finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Have a great day.